Alright, I'd like to rant for a little bit about what changes I have made to the field inverter because there's a lot, okay? And this is going to be before I add any of the patch changes, the fire resistance and the radiation resistance patches. Um, that's gonna that's gonna make this very messy. But I'd like to explain what I've changed about the field inverter because it was pretty screwy before. So I'm going to show you what problems the field inverter had in the base game. So as you can see right now, we have a field inverter inside the game. This is the base patch 3 version. And there's a couple things that you might notice are a little bit off. For starters, the gun does not move up and down. This thing is stationary and it sits kind of flat-headed like this the whole time. It doesn't matter that an object could be directly above it and it just starts shooting at it. The projectile will just move wherever it needs to, and the gun is in that stationary position. The next thing that's a bit screwy is you can see on the side here, let me just pause the game, there is this little glitched section where the glowing parts kind of overlap on this piece right here, and it's for all of the LODs. This is not supposed to be that way. It's not supposed to have that little glowy bit there, but it does. But next, you'll notice that when the vehicle shoots, it does like a little skip. Like when you're walking and this thing shoots, it just slides across the floor. Well, there it goes again. Like the feet completely screw up whenever the gun is fired. And that's not exactly optimal. But also get this. Let's say that you're switching into shield mode, okay, and you're firing at something. Yep, it just teleports the other way. So what happens is you got your gun pointed at something. That gun is just gonna freeze in place, and then it's just gonna teleport to the other direction. And to add insult to injury, the field inverter shield mode version does not have any LOD models. This is like LOD 2, and that's it. That's all you get. The quality doesn't change, so not only is this vehicle in the shield mode not optimized particularly well, but it looks kind of ugly when you come up close to it and you look at it. So yeah, we have a big fat list of problems here. And now I'm going to show you the new field inverter that I've worked on. So, this is the new field inverter. As you can tell, the turret actually does rotate now. So it rotates up and down to face whatever target it needs to be shooting at. So that's an instant improvement. And the other thing that you'll notice is that the legs don't glitch anymore whenever the gun shoots. So the gun shoots, the legs just keep doing whatever they're doing. So that's nice. But then on top of that, you can see that the glitches are gone in the model. So we don't have this little blue piece stretched out anymore. And on top of this, if I click the shield ability, it rotates the gun to the proper position before activating the shield. And on top of this, if you manage to get far away from your enemies, if there are no enemies around, and the gun is not rotated to shoot at the enemies, well, I guess over. But if you're just sitting out here and there are no enemies, this will activate instantly instead of having a delay to wait for the gun to rotate. But as you can also tell, this field inverter is a higher quality model. If you come in here and you look at this, It is a higher quality model when you get up close, and then when you get far away, the LODs start to kick in, and it becomes less and less quality. You can tell that that's just a square in the center, like a diamond shape, instead of the better looking version. But the vehicle is better optimized, the animations are fixed, and it just is overall a better functioning vehicle. So now I am going to excruciatingly go into how I did this. So first off, let's start with the walking animation. How exactly did I fix the field inverter so that it doesn't hop skip or whatever whenever it shoots? So it turns out that there's a couple culprits for that. If you take a look at the original field inverter model, all right, so we have our original field inverter here. We can hide these if we want, but basically you have your attack animation. So if we head over to unit abilities right here, you have attack 00. And basically this is the only attack animation. They did not make an attack move animation, which is normally used for whenever a vehicle is in the process of going somewhere and it's shooting at the same time. And this animation basically makes the legs crouch down a little bit. So that's already a red flag. I tried creating a move attack animation to go along with this, but it still would have the occasional glitch. Like it would start out fine, but then after the gun is like partway through, it just starts skipping for no reason. And ultimately, I figured out that that has to do with the walker looping animations. So basically, these being turned on, it would create that weird behavior. If I turn them off, then it wouldn't skip with the move attack animation, but then the vehicle wouldn't move properly. So it's all just borked, okay? This just being a walker and having all of this, it just it would bork the animations. So we couldn't use this. We can't use that in tandem with a regular weapon. So instead, I created a hardpoint. So the model is divided into two parts now. You have the field inverter body, and you have the field inverter legs. Well, actually, three parts, because technically you have the field inverter shield variant, because you have the shield version and the non-shield version. But point is, the main one is divided into legs and body. And the body, this is a hard point, okay? And it just sits there. It behaves like the normal gun, shoots like the gun, has the sound effects for it or whatever. It took away the sound effects from the legs and gave it to the turret. So the turret is now a hard point. That means the legs can move independently and an attack animation is never triggered. So therefore, the legs can move and this can still target stuff. Now, in order to keep the targeting behaviors, which just might not be necessary, but I didn't go too deep into it. In order to keep the targeting behaviors where the AI will follow an enemy to a certain point and then walk away or still want to target or kill enemies, I still have all the weapon behaviors on here. So it has a fake gun. But I've basically removed the weapon, like the projectile for the weapon, along with removing the turret bones. And by doing this, the gun doesn't rotate anymore, it doesn't move, but it still has the targeting behavior. The legs still want to move towards a target to kill something, and the top of the field inverter will do this. Now, the next thing you might be wondering is, okay, so if you created these legs, how exactly are you making the shield mode work? Which is a good question, because the hard point here, I tried making it to where the hard point had the switch ability to turn into the shield. That does not work. If you try to use the switch ability on a hard point instead of the actual vehicle itself, the hard point will become dislocated from the vehicle. So that was a no-go. We couldn't make that happen. So what we're doing instead is the hard point is getting teleported. Okay? So basically the bottom half of the vehicle, the part that is the legs, okay? What's happening is, how do I describe it? The top half of the vehicle still exists, but it's invisible. And then whenever the deploy animation is activated, which actually I can just open another tab. But whenever the animation is activated in order for this to open up, the hard point gets teleported like a bajillion miles underground where you can never see it. And then the legs grow a body. They basically make the body to where it's visible, and that plays the animation. So, as absurd as that sounds, let me show you what exactly is happening. Yeah, we've got legs 2. So, basically, this has a new hardpoint bone. Hardpoint attachment, whatever. And what is happening with this hardpoint is, let me adjust this real quick. So you can tell that the hard point is being messed with. So on the animation table, what's happening is when it starts the deploy animation, which is right here, from frame 61 to frame 100, it is teleporting this hard point way, way, way far underground. If we take a look at the motion tab up here, you can see that across the z-axis, it's teleporting it to negative 30,000. And the reason, you might be asking, well, why can't you just hide the hard point? Well, you can't, because basically the bone simply acts as a spawner for the hard point. I can't change the size of the hard point from this unit. I can't, I can't scale it, but I can rotate it and I can change its position. So basically, I'm removing the top part of the vehicle. And then simultaneously, as this gets teleported underground, the top part of the vehicle is becoming visible again. And you might be asking, well, how do you do that? The way I'm doing that is this turret bone, okay, which connects to all of these other resources. I've learned that you can't just like grab the mesh and then create a visibility modifier and add that to it. No, what you have to do is grab the bone that is connected to everything that you want. So the models, I separated it into head models and just the regular models. That might not necessarily be something you have to do. But what I did is I added a visibility modifier to the turret bone. So right here, we have the visibility modifier, and it's just making it to where this becomes visible only for this animation. It gets set from a 0 to a 1 when it hits this frame, and then back to a 0 again when it's over. And anything that is underneath this bone, anything that's connected to this bone, becomes invisible along with it, which I think is really cool. So since that mesh is connected to these bones, since these bones are responsible for making it move with the skin modifier, the mesh becomes invisible along with all these other objects, including the particles. So, yeah, the top half of the vehicle exists, but it's invisible. And whenever we activate the deploy ability, this becomes invisible and the hard point gets teleported out of the way. So basically, that's what's happening. It's playing the full animation as normal, but it's moving that hard point out of the way where you can't see it. So I guess the next question you might be asking is, how the frick did you get the gun to rotate to that position before the animation kicks in? Oh boy. So, in order to do that, I really had to mess with the XML and a little bit of Lua. So, normally, what would happen is you use your switch mode ability. And we still have a switch mode ability in here. You know, you have your switch type that's changing the vehicle from this to that, and it's using an animation to do it. Yada yada blah blah blah. And basically, if you go to your units, let me scroll up to this version. It's a shield mode. Okay, so what's happening is you have all of this, does whatever, and these are your abilities. Normally, this is the ability that you would have visible, and it's called your field inverter toggle shield mode. But basically, what happens is if this activates, it freezes the vehicle's current animation status. So, like, it freezes the vehicle in its place. Like, the gun cannot rotate, the legs don't move, like, nothing is working whenever this activates. So, we couldn't activate that immediately. Instead, this is getting hidden and we're using this ability instead. And this carries over the same name as the original because I did not want to change any of the hotkeys. So it maintains the same toggle hotkey, but it's using an effect generator instead of a switch type. So when you activate this, it activates toggle shield on effect generator. And it's basically activating this effect generator right here. And it's doing a lot of things. First, up here, we have reset abilities. And what reset abilities is doing is it's basically setting the abilities, all the abilities back to red with like the little countdown timer thing, because we're still using a toggle, even though we should probably be using a regular button, and we're using the toggle so we can keep the hotkey. So whenever it swaps over, we want to make sure that the player can't continue to press the toggle button. And the toggle button doesn't work the same because it's not a switch type. So the button activates, all right, and then when you press it, it uses the reset abilities. If we take a look at our vehicle effects here, basically what this is doing is it has this effect component and it resets all the abilities on your unit. Big whoop. So then what's happening is you have disable field inverter gun effect. And what that does is it disables the weapon. It's basically disabling the behaviors on the vehicle. It disables weapon, targeting, targeting twice for some reason. That's not supposed to be there, but that's fine. It's disabling these things. And when it does that, it's basically taking the gun, and the gun is getting reset to its default position because it can't target anything and it can't shoot at anything, so why bother? All right. And that activates as well. And as you can tell, this is activating for a duration of 10 seconds. So this is what happens next. All of this stuff is activating immediately. But basically, the next thing is it's going to attempt to activate the shield mode. It's going to attempt to turn this on, which switches over the thing. But what's happening here is this will only activate if there are no enemies nearby. And the reason we're doing this is because if there are enemies nearby, it's likely that the field inverter is trying to shoot them. And if the field inverter is trying to shoot the units, then we want time for the field inverter to move its gun back to the default position. So, but if there are no enemies nearby, then you wouldn't want to sit there and waste time for like this 1 second. You don't want to waste a second just sitting there doing nothing, waiting for, well, actually, 1.2 seconds. But you don't want to waste that time just looking at the vehicle doing nothing. So when there are no enemies around, it just immediately activates the shield ability. So it just looks fluid. And the way this works, the way it's activating that, is if you go into the vehicle effects once again, this is applying a function. Okay, so this is using the effect component Lua. But whenever this activates, it's activating a function that exists inside of the effect components. And then right here, it's running this script where it finds all the objects within a radius of 240, and then it's just running through this for loop that determines whether it's an enemy object or not. And then the exclusions here are resources, bridges, insignificant objects, untargetable, all that sort of stuff. So it doesn't matter if these things are enemies because it can't shoot at them anyways. I mean, it could shoot at this, but that would mean that civilians would cause the field inverter to not want to go into shield mode. Just whatever. That we're doing this on purpose. But anywho, it's checking for if there's an enemy nearby, and if there's an enemy nearby, it's going to return, and it's not going to activate this. But if there's no enemy nearby, it is going to activate the shield mode immediately. So that's how that's working. You can tell that each effect class is different. I did use some effect classes that probably shouldn't be there, but that's just because I got kind of lazy. Well, not lazy, but it just works. And if it works, I don't want to touch it. But each one of these has to have a different effect class, or they can conflict with each other and not want to function. But what happens next is 1.2 seconds later, it's going to try again. Except this time, it doesn't have the condition that stops the shield from activating. Instead, this is a function that will activate, and it's just checking for if the shield is active. So if the shield mode is not active, then it's going to activate it. That's really it. And it doesn't matter if this activates twice, because, I mean, if it activates already, then it's not going to activate again. But the point is, enemies nearby, this won't activate. If enemies are not nearby, then this will activate, and that's to make the animations look fluid for the transition. Now, because there are some quirks with the way effect generators and abilities and crap work, and because I'm using a toggle button instead of having two separate buttons that swap it back and forth, I did have to do something a little different here for transforming back. So for the transforming back function, or the ability, whatever, you click on this, and it'll reset the charge. For starters, whenever it transfers over, it will reset the abilities, and this is for the countdown timer, so that it turns red whenever it swaps over to the shield mode. Because we don't want you to be able to go into shield mode and then immediately go back. So this activates, resets the ability, whatever, only activates once, and that's on its spawn. But when you click the ability, what's happening here is this does not have an effect generator. This is just a blank ability that does absolutely nothing. And the reason for this is because the ability is turned on, but because we're resetting the ability, we can't just set the effect generator to starts active and then connect it to this button, or it's going to break. Okay, it's going to break, and then this is never going to want to activate again. And if we set it to not active and we reset the abilities, and the button is going to end up being pressed twice in order for it to turn itself off and then on again. So in order to bypass all of that, what we did instead is this is an effect generator that starts active, and it has a modal refresh rate. So that means that this is an effect generator, and it just activates over and over and over again so long as the ability exists. And then it's using deactivate field inverter mode effect. And what that does is, if you head over here, this is activating a Lua. Okay, so it's activating that Lua every 0.5 seconds. And it's basically checking for if the deactivate ability, what it's doing is it's checking for a couple things. It's checking to make sure that shield mode is enabled, and it's also checking to make sure if the ability is not enabled. So in its default state, the ability is enabled, and this is enabled, so it's not going to deactivate shield mode. But then once you press that button, the conditions are met because this is deactivated and the shield mode is active, so it's going to deactivate it. And this condition is also here because if you deactivate the shield, well, that's not going to count as a condition anymore. So this would be false, so this can only activate once. But this just runs on a loop for as long as you are in shield mode. And whenever you press the button to go out of shield mode, it's basically going to activate this function to switch it out of shield mode. But yeah, that is basically what's happening. So this is just running on a constant loop so long as it's in shield mode, and then once it detects that the field inverter you have pressed the ability, it's going to activate the switch type, which transfers it back to the original vehicle. Wow. So that is a bit of a mouthful, but that is how all of this functions. And it is a lot, I will say that. But basically, on top of these changes, these XML changes and these Lua changes, to make all of this scripting possible, I did alter the models. So in the new model, I did fix it so that it no longer has that glitched side piece right here. And it turns out that the whole cause behind this happening was because a single vertice was connected to the wrong part of the mesh, just like in the bones. Like when you went to the skin modifier, just one little part of this light strip was connected to the wrong thing, and that's what caused that. But for the shield mode, what I did to fix that up was I took the new field inverter that I had been working on with this separated top and bottom or whatever. And I fixed it up to where it has a new idle animation and a new deploy animation, just running everything in reverse as it normally would. And it just uses all this. But also something to keep in mind, which this was a glitch that I ran into when working with vehicles. But this spawns like whenever you have the shield additives underneath the shield, they spawn as a couple completely different objects. And they actually spawn as like a mesh additive V colorize, and you don't want that. You need to change that to mesh additive. And what that will do is it will allow the shield to actually show up in here instead of disappear. But on top of this, you want to adjust the UV scroll rate. So that actually controls like the movement of the mesh as it moves along. And basically, the farther up you move this, the faster it'll go in one direction or the other. So this is one direction, that's the other direction. And the reason for that is this is underneath the shield. And you want this to persist underneath it as it's moving along. The color was kept to its default, so that means it was kept to its default, and because of the nature of the texture, it does change to whatever color you're a part of. But this is also applied to the second shield additive, and then the main shield itself is like this sort of custom, well, not custom. What it is it's basically applying like a water effect. So you have like water bump 00, and it's using this mesh head. What is it using? Mesh head. Or no, it's using mesh heat. And it's basically has this distortion to it. And you can see the UV scroll rate is going this way, so it's going to wave around a little bit, but whatever. I had to configure all this and fix this for the additives so that the shield would be a certain color. And I think that is important to address in terms of like people trying to get stuff to work. But yeah, this shield mode version, it has LOD models, and I fixed the particles up so that the particles behave the same way that they would in the other. This one even has the damage alts, so this one also smokes up, and smoke will like come from it whenever it starts getting more and more damaged, which is something that the old version wouldn't do. Very minor detail, especially since this thing is covered up by a shield, but in theory, this should make the game a little bit more optimized, and it should make it prettier to look at, because you can zoom in and see a much better looking shielded field inverter. But yeah, that was a mouthful. But that is the gist of what I changed about the field inverter and how I got those changes to work. Oh, and one more thing. You might be wondering, okay, you created this as a hard point. How is that going to work with hackers? Because hackers are not targeting the hard points. Well, I fixed that. They can now target hard pointed objects that have hard points. If Knight is listening to this, because that's something that he tried to fix so that it would freeze the hard points on like a P-Springer or whatever. The trick is that you need to add target HP parent. And that's something that I had to do with the field inverter as well, with its effect generators. Because like in order to make the weapon behavior become disabled for the hard point, I had to use self HP parent, which would include hard points that are connected to the parent object. So whenever you have the hacker here, you need to add target HP parent so that when you have a target, it can choose like a regular target or it can choose a hardpoint parent target, and it will disable the hardpoints along with the parent object when it does this. So, I mean, that's nice. So I added that to both of the abilities down here. But to make sure this doesn't attack walkers, per se, I took a look at all of the target filter categories involving hardpoints, and it only had like most of the hardpoints, especially on things like Peacebringers, they are only called hardpoint. But all this other stuff, whether this is coming from a building or a walker or whatever, what this is saying right here is you're allowed to target hardpoints so long as they're not leg sockets, body sockets, can attack, resource, instant resource, organic, or hero. And that's basically how these are structured. Pluses are ands, and these little slashes are ors. So whenever you're doing this, like it's saying this is one of the things that it can attack. Or it could attack this. So you can attack small things that are not resources, organic, or heroes. You can attack piloted things that are not resources or heroes. You can attack flying things that are not resources or heroes, and so on and so forth. But in order to make it so that the hackers lock down the field inverters, I simply made it to where it can target hardpoints. Now, if we don't like this, okay, and we want to make sure that this only happens to field inverters and we actually want hard pointed objects to be able to attack, we can change that. We can either add another filter or category to the other hard points and make it, well, that's basically what we'd do. We'd add a filter to that, or we'd add a filter to the field inverter. So like we'd make the field inverter hardpoint male. So you would basically make it to where it's only allowed to attack hardpoints that are males. So it'd look like that. You can attack hardpoints that are males that are not this, and that. And then you just make the field inverter hardpoint male. You can do something like that, something goofy like that to make it work. But for now, hackers can now target hardpoints so long as it is not any of these other categories. So it still can't attack walkers. But yeah, that is a very, very long summary of the changes that I have made to the field inverter. I'm about to make more changes specifically for the new patching system. But yeah, before the patching system, yep, this is what I've done. Yay.